Hi, Anisha.
Hi, Dr. Pushkar. How are you?
Hear me okay?
Yes.
Great.
Would you just give me 1 second? I'll give
Yes.
you. Would you like to try sharing your presentation once?
Yeah,
I've given.
that's what I'm just trying to do. And give me a second. I'm always struggling with this Zoom.
We have time. It's okay.
I should do screens advanced. No. Can you
Yes. I can
present?
the window.
Or are you seeing the screen?
Yes.
Uh, is it now in
Screen show mode. Yes, it has.
okay.
You can just scroll through and we can just see if
Yeah.
it's.
Okay. All right. Let's do that. Moving.
Yes, it's moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Right. We'll go back and we shall wait.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the CGIAR Policy Innovations webinar on From Evidence to Policy and Action, What Works for Women in Climate Smart Agriculture, which is being presented by Dr. Ranjitha Puskur. Uh, so I'll just like to quickly introduce you to our presenter for the day. Dr. Ranjitha Puskur is an international leader in agricultural research for development with nearly 3 decades of experience across Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. Currently a principal scientist at the International Rice Research Institute, she has held senior roles at various CGIAR centers, including IRRI, World Fish, the Livestock Research Institute, and and IFMI, where she has advanced gender equality monitoring and evaluation and inclusive innovation systems in food and agriculture. Dr. Pushkar has been a driving force in the CGI Gender platform, leading evidence to policy work. She holds a PhD in agricultural economics and has published extensively on gender, food systems, and agricultural transformation. Dr. Pushkar?
Thank you, Anisha. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Absolutely a pleasure and privilege to be able to do this, share some of my thoughts, share some evidence with you on this very important topic. Anisha, can you just confirm that you can see my screen?
I can see the presentation
Yeah,
screen.
it's in a presentation mode now. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, right. Thank you so much. So let me dive right in. So today we are going to talk about women in climate smart agriculture and why is that important? How are we going to help them get the best out of this climate smart agriculture as a climate solution? What kind of evidence do we have that can inform policy and development practice? I mean, standard opening, all of us know this, but basically the point is that women are very important for agriculture. There is no agriculture, there is no food without women. If women did not engage in any of the countries, there's going to be no food for any of us. And agriculture is also important for women's livelihoods. Most of the rural women, a large majority, actually depend on agriculture for their livelihoods. So there is that high interdependency there for women in agriculture. But these women are also amongst the poorest. A lot of them are poor. They are malnourished. They produce the food for us, feed us, but then they are malnourished. They eat the last and the least. And what's the major threat that is not just looming, we are experiencing it, that we are all facing today, especially agriculture? It is climate change. And there is evidence to show that women are disproportionately more vulnerable to climate change, mainly because they do not have access to resources, etc., that help them develop that adaptive capacity. So if you look at that nexus, what's happening, the climate change, agriculture, gender, those intersections, women's coping mechanisms are different from that of men, but even amongst within women, their resilience, but also how they cope, their strategies are all dependent not just on their identities, which are determined by a very complex interplay of class, caste, religion, age, etc. So basically, not all women are the same. It's not a homogeneous group. So how they cope, how each of them copes is very different. And all of them, pretty much a lot of them, have very low adaptive capacity. That is because they're completely dependent on natural resources for their livelihoods when they are in agriculture, but they have very limited control over a lot of those, also limited access to other productive resources, be it assets, be it training, be it credit, be it skills and knowledge. And they also have time poverty because of the large amounts of unpaid care burden that they have that they are responsible for. As a result, women tend to rely on negative coping mechanisms, quick fixes, but in the process, they might be resorting to maladaptive agricultural practices or asset depletion, and therefore they get into this vicious cycle of vulnerability, and due to climate change, and that cycle just keeps getting more and more serious, more and more intense. And in the last few decades, we've put forward climate smart agriculture as an important climate solution. This addresses three dimensions. It is about increasing productivity and consequently incomes while ensuring sustainability. We are not depleting natural resources, etc. It is about promoting resilience through adaptation. It's also about mitigation, reducing GHG emissions. So, as a package, this can be a very powerful climate solution. And if we look at evidence, it says that, climate smart agriculture is actually effective in increasing productivity of women farmers. And the productivity of farms, agricultural farms managed by women, is actually almost 11% less than male managed farms in the Indian context. So we do need these women to be able to increase their productivity through using climate smart solutions. But evidence also shows that adoption of climate smart agriculture by women is low for a variety of reasons. And development of policies which are informed by evidence as to why this happens, what are the more effective solutions, what has worked there, where, and why, and worked for whom. There is there is some evidence there. I'm not saying we have everything that we need. There are huge evidence gaps in this area. When we started doing this work, I mean, looking at evidence synthesis and mapping, there was a lot of emphasis on the diagnosis to show that women are vulnerable, establishing and re-establishing vulnerability, but very few impact assessments or evaluations which show what effective solutions are and what works and what doesn't. Also very limited is the use of this evidence, scientific evidence, to inform policies or development projects or strategies and so on. So we try to do sort of collate and synthesize evidence around this area. Basically, the question which we started working with was, what does the current evidence say about gender disparities in climate smart agriculture, adoption of and benefits from adopting climate smart agriculture? What are the gaps? What are the research and development priorities and strategies that are needed to address these gaps and inform solutions that are equitable and inclusive? So we took up a fairly a big effort to actually pull together all the evidence, make sense of it, synthesize it, make sense of it, communicate it. So I won't go through all this, but there's multiple pieces that we did to pull together everything that we had. So I will share some of the important highlights of what we have from this evidence with you. When you look at adoption of climate smart agriculture, the evidence shows that women actually take up these techniques faster than men when they become aware and when they are confident they have the knowledge and skills to do it. They are the first ones to actually adopt it. I mean, they are not, this whole thing about women being risk averse is not always very true. But because of the constraints they face in terms of access to resources, not being able to control decisions, they are not able to maintain them in the long run. But they are also interested in activities which align with the roles they play in the household, on the farms, in the community. And they do place families' welfare on top of, their interests. And they are also keen on taking up activities that reduce time demands. Don't forget that they are extremely, extremely time poor. So, therefore, anything that helps them alleviate that demand and doesn't add to that burden is important for them. But they also are not in a position to do a significant reallocation of household resources, be it capital, be it labor. Therefore, something that doesn't upset the apple cart too much is what they are looking for. But we've also seen that a lot of these technologies and interventions that we introduce can actually marginalize some of the specialized knowledge, the traditional practices that they have. And that is not something which is extremely desirable, because not all traditional practices are bad or wrong or unhelpful. So, I mean, we shouldn't be throwing away the baby with the bathwater. So, I mean, so it is important to protect that knowledge. And we've also, I mean, the evidence also say that, some of these technologies might be able to reduce labor burdens on the farm, but the care burden that they have in the households, which is quite significant, is not usually addressed. And then, we still have people who ask, why should climate smart agriculture, why should we bother to make it inclusive or gender inclusive? What is the business case for it? What is the justification? Do we really need to invest in it? So, evidence actually shows that when women are included in climate smart agriculture, the adoption rates are higher, the farming households become more resilient. There is evidence of greater food security and dietary diversity amongst these households, where women are taking the lead in um, adopting, using climate smart agricultural techniques, technologies, and practices. There's reduced poverty, better welfare, but also more broader environmental, social outcomes that are happening. And I mean, if you take the case of India, almost about 37% domestic migration, male out migration, rural out migration is recorded. And therefore, more women are now managing farms. So, decision making, there is mixed evidence on whether they're able to make decisions fully when in the absence of men or not. It's very, very nuanced, but definitely they are managing farms, and the farms managed by them, as I mentioned earlier, are less productive. So therefore, I think it is in everybody's interest. I don't think we need a bigger business case than this to say why that is important. So when we looked at the gamut of evidence that is there, how do we make these climate solutions work for women? I don't expect you to read through all this, but these are various aspects, and then I will just quickly run you, zoom into a few of those, and then take you through some of those. So, what increases uptake of climate smart agriculture by women? What we have seen is interventions have to be bundled. There's no silver bullets, there's no single technology, no single institutional innovation that is going to help us get there. So we need to combine knowledge, input access, social change, the whole transformative change that we need to talk about. That is important. Collective action, the self-help groups, the cooperatives, and leadership of women in these organizations is very, very critical. That helps accelerate uptake of these in of the climate smart agriculture. Training and outreach, so improving their skills and knowledge is very important. I mean, evidence shows that interventions like farmer field schools, where they're much more intensively engaged over a longer period, but also video mediated trainings, demonstrations are actually most effective for women. But also female extension workers, schedules of these trainings tailored to, you know, preferences of women and the times that work for them, the durations that work for them is really important. Of course, supporting land and asset rights. I mean, we know that takes a long time, but we have to keep chipping away at it. Access to credit, risk management, insurance, digital inclusion also help. All this can only be sustained when there is norm change at the household level, at the community level, and where women are able to take up, decision making at these multiple levels. All these are fairly simple. Nothing that we have, that nothing that is new, or that we haven't heard before. But the point is, doing all this needs a lot of intentionality. When we are designing programs, we can't just say, oh, put a line there and say, oh, this will be inclusive, we will have women, participating and benefiting. That doesn't do it. At every step of the design, of implementation, you need to keep asking, is this working for women? How do we make this work for women? So that, I think, is the critical part. And of course, we can do a lot without money. And if you look at gender responsive climate finance in agriculture, basically there is climate finance going into agri-food systems is pretty less. It is less than 4%. And if you look at a gender responsive finance within that, it is actually very, very little. There's few examples, far and few, like low cost climate insurance for women smallholder farmers, financing their agri businesses, where they're actually supporting water management and training of women farmers in climate smart agricultural practices. Very few examples there, but long ways to go. And this is important. If we do not budget and for it, if we do not allocate finance, I don't think we will go very far. There have been some interesting and useful mechanisms, like providing grants through impact investors as intermediaries, or blended finance together with the private sector, providing funds for technical assistance. I think these are very important, and we have to figure out how we mainstream those or integrate these strategies into our programs and climate finance. What are the policy priorities that jump out at us when we look at all this evidence that is there? Basically, as I was saying earlier, we need to be intentional in design and budgeting across all climate smart agriculture programs. We need to mandate inclusion both at the national and state level policies. We need to include gender specific needs, targets, budgeting criteria in every initiative, every project on climate smart agriculture, all the way from planning, funding, monitoring, accountability. This should help us get to more tailored extension, credit, insurance, input access for all the women smallholder farmers. Generic solutions are not working for them, will not work for them. And as we said, alongside, we should also be working on improving the land asset digital rights so that women have more access to these, are able to use these, but also be able to link to markets. So, I mean, digital public goods, mobile extension, all these must intentionally reach women. We know there is a huge gender digital gap. So how do we make sure we are bridging that gap and making sure women are not being left out. I mean, this whole issue about climate information, it is really, really important information and advisories. How do we make sure these information and service gaps are bridged? What kind of initiatives, innovations do we need to do that? And then when you give them, and how can we give them, enable them to access markets, agri value chains? So that is very, very critical. And then we talked about bundling being very important. And these are multi-sectoral bundles. It isn't just, a single department or a ministry. So that is important. And then we need governance of these systems, at scale. So we need to combine what we call socio-technical innovation bundles, social innovations, organizational innovations, market innovations. For example, you know, just supporting women's collectives, promoting them. Yes, great. But then how do you make sure they have market access, targeted procurement? How do we make sure they have access to flexible finance? A lot of the FPOs and FPCs in India now currently are dysfunctional. And a major constraint there is access to finance that works for them, finance mechanisms that work for these women. Leadership development, that is all very important. So, all these things need to come together. And these women having a voice, representation in decision making bodies, be it local user groups, be it national planning processes for climate smart agriculture, they need to be at the table. And not just be at the table, be able, their voices should be heard and taken into account while we design these programs. So this is what comes out. So I can't go through the whole evidence that we have, in this few minutes, but what we actually, when we got all these together, basically, okay, so one more thing to go. And yeah, as I was saying, and when we are designing these programs and policies, we really need to pay attention to engaging women, not just as beneficiaries, passive beneficiaries of programs, but they are capable of driving change in their households, in their community, in the country. So let's make sure they have a voice, their voice is heard, make them partners in the design and implementation, work with women's groups to do that. And who are we targeting? Who are the most vulnerable? Where are they? Who are they? So there is elite capture in a lot of these programs as well. So how do we make sure we are targeting the most vulnerable? And recognizing that all women are not the same. There are social differences. Therefore, each woman is different. So, and no one solution works for everyone. So, how do we make sure we are able to get that nuance into our interventions and strategies? I know we can't design a solution, a separate solution for every woman or every household, but how do we make sure we meet somewhere in the middle and then say what works for most and how? And do not forget what engagement in climate smart agriculture means for their drudgery. A lot of studies show that their burden actually increases when you engage them in some of these things. More work, time poverty, leading to more time poverty. But then they slog, I mean, they do all that, but then they don't get an equal, I mean, and a fair share of the benefits from all this. So how do we ensure that? So we've got to keep an eye on that one. And the biggest thing that's holding us back is data. There is no gender disaggregated data. There are no good evaluations of programs and, what's working, what are programs and projects, what's working. And without that, it is really hard to come up with strategies and meaningful policies that benefit women. So I think we have to invest in generating that data. It is a good investment to make, and there are several efforts where we are trying to design simple systems to collect the really important basic data that can help us inform policy and so on. So given all this, so what we said, one of the things we did was to put all this together in an evidence portal. This is the CGIAR gender platform. Now it's called the Accelerator, which has done this. That's the link to the portal. So we have put together all the available evidence, that is at the intersection of gender, agriculture, climate change. After all the synthesis here, basically what we have also seen that there is little evidence, but even that evidence that is available is not used adequately by policymakers or development practitioners, to design programs and policies. And a lot of that is also because many are not aware of this, that this evidence exists, or do not have access to that. So we developed this portal as a tool to bridge the gap between research-based evidence and policy making. What we tried to do was, we've analyzed, synthesized sort of tens of scientific articles, journal articles, gray literature, etc. But we've pulled it all together, made sense of it, simplified and structured it so that it's easy for users to to figure out what is there, what is useful for them. We've also tried to present this evidence in different formats which are accessible and can be readily used. So essentially, it is a global public good, a digital public good, and it provides access to high quality synthesized research and evidence on the topic of climate change, agriculture, and gender. So, so each of so we've organized the portal, the evidence that is there around a set of questions that decision makers often encounter. For example, what interventions are effective in helping vulnerable communities? What policies are being adopted to support? How are women farmers adapting to climate change? But you can also browse these by themes, be it governance, be it livelihoods, be it innovation. But there's also sectoral focus. You can also browse, let's say, by water, nutrition, land use. So this homepage lists a number of common questions that are usually asked. Each main question uh, has multiple sub questions. So as you dig deeper, you will look at different, more specific questions, but also there is one policy brief attached to each of those main questions. This brings together all the key findings. It's a one pager, and also gives practical recommendations for policy. So we have, for each of the main questions, you have a policy brief, but then a number of sub questions. And if you go to each of those sub questions, again, as I said, diverse ways of presenting the evidence for different kinds of users, how much appetite they have, how much detail and information do we need. So for these, each sub question, so you get, when you click on it, you get a pop-up short summary like this. Uh, or you can also go and look at a short answer, which provides a brief answer to the question in plain language, not scientific language. I mean, not research language, not jargon. Then there is also a long answer, which gives a more detailed explanation of what the evidence is actually saying. And for those who have appetite for, more details and want to dig into the evidence, we also have technical review summaries for all the key documents that provide that evidence and have formed the basis for those responses in the long answers, short answers, and so on. So this is something we've just launched, and this will be a live portal. So as evidence becomes available, we will keep updating it. And we also want to test in the coming year to see how, you know, whether this form of evidence sharing and communication is effective. Would policymakers actually, decision makers actually be willing to use it? What works? Which of these elements are working, which is not, and so on. So do check out this portal. Do provide us feedback, and then happy to engage with you all on this. And then if you need more details about any of this, happy to provide that. That's my email there. But basically, not forget that women can be very powerful agents of change, can help drive food systems transformations that we are seeking. So make them a part of your solution. They are leaders, they are innovators, they are farmers, they're market players, but they're also caretakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pushkar. That was a really nice presentation and quite informative as well. And thank you for taking us to the portal as well. Even I was curious about it. So thank you so much. We do have questions. So I'll start with the first one. What are the factors affecting low adoption rate of climate smart technologies among women?
Okay, can we maybe look at two or three questions, and then we can see
Oh,
if we could group some of those or whatever?
sure.
Yeah.
Then much of the agricultural tools, implements, and technologies, how does are more oriented towards men? How does that affect the? Okay.
Mm.
Then, given increasing feminization of agriculture, not only in India but in other parts, how does the question above play out? That relates to the adoption of technologies. I think, yeah,
Okay.
that's one main question that has come up,
Okay. Okay.
and
Yeah,
we
yeah,
have
maybe I'll go there. So
yes.
yeah, thank you so much for the questions. So oftentimes, why are women not adopting climate smart agriculture as much as they should? It relates to a lot of the gaps that exist in their access to resources knowledge. First of all, they might not be aware. We know that extension agencies don't always reach out to women, research organizations as well. So basically, women do not have access to this institutional support for institutional technical support. They may not be aware. They may not, if they are aware, they may not have the skills and knowledge to use those correctly, because they also have limited access to training. um, Oftentimes, a lot of these trainings might happen off-site, not in the villages. And we always hear about how women do not have time, can't leave homes and children and livestock and go and attend some of these trainings. So that's there. And interestingly, the question that Shalini asked actually is one of those things. A lot of the agricultural tools implement technologies are designed for men. How does that affect women's adoption of CSA? That's exactly the point. They do not. They might not be relevant to their social context, their economic context. For example, there might be an amazing machine that women can use that would reduce their labor burdens, their drudgery, and all that. But do they have access to finance that will help them um, um, you know, get that machine, buy that machine, or even rent that machine and use? So it isn't just the knowledge and skills, but also access to affordability to these technologies. So that really holds them back. Um, Pralay, you had a question on share the PowerPoint. Yes, we shall absolutely do that. Yeah,
Even digital
Shalini.
tools.
Yeah, I think the other one is answered as well, why that affects. So digital rights, yeah. So I don't so much, maybe not so much the rights, but there is a huge gender digital gap, as in either women do not have access to mobile phones. I mean, there is still, it's almost like 40-50%. Africa seems to be better than South Asia in that respect. If you have a smartphone, you might not have the digital literacy, that's what they call it, literacy and skills to use it effectively. Oftentimes, what we have seen is that there is one phone in the household, that belongs to the husband or the son. So women don't have access to it all the time. So they have to use it when these men are at home, and yeah, be able to use it, have the skills to use it. A lot of rural women are still illiterate in the South Asian and Indian context. So that is one. So, you can have mechanisms like voice messages and all that, but having access to the phone, internet connectivity is still unaffordable to a lot of them. So, and then, or you might not have the infrastructure, good connectivity in rural areas. That is one. And we've seen, sometimes social norms come in the way. It's like, oh, young women should not be given access to phones. So that also holds them back. So there's all kinds of these things. So how do you bridge the gender digital gap? So again, there have been multiple efforts, people trying to give phones, but also investing in digital literacy, providing skills, etc. So a lot of efforts are going on. But what is interesting, what's happening on this front is, interestingly, a lot, it's not just government or research organizations that are doing these projects. There is also a lot of private sector involved in this, the big private sector. Interestingly, there is not a lot of data on what is happening, which strategies are working to bridge these gaps. We are seeing progress, but then we don't have an awful lot on what's working and what's not working. So, again, gender disaggregated data is something we have to tackle fairly urgently, I would say. Uh, so there is a question, is the dietary diversity reduced due to Green Revolution? Yeah, well, I guess generally diversity, farming systems have become less diverse, I think, after Green Revolution, but not everywhere. I mean, again, let's face it, Green Revolution was also restricted to a few pockets. But what also drives cropping patterns is the markets. So, people, what are they producing for? Smallholder farmers, if they are just producing for their home consumption, they still have fairly diverse farming systems. But if you are producing for the market and wanting to make money, then it is less diverse. So, but would you use the money to buy diverse foods for your households or not? Again, it is also a lot to do with behaviors and knowledge and attitudes and so on. So gender specific targets, what meaningful gender specific targets? Exactly. Thank you for that question. What's a meaningful gender specific target? It is definitely not the number of women who have adopted a technology. It is what has happened as a result of that, what has changed for them. Are they have and going beyond productivity, it isn't just how much their yield has increased, it is about also going beyond that, their incomes. But has anything changed for them personally, as in their agency, their empowerment? has anything changed in the norms, attitudes, etc. within the household? Are they better able to better negotiate within households, within communities, and so on? So it is about going beyond counting numbers. How many women came to the trainings? To how many women have we given these let us say climate smart varieties or whatever, seed of those, but to actually measuring what has changed for them. And that needs to be in all development projects, but all government targets as well. It isn't just about activities and outputs, but it is about the results of those, what is changing because of that. Um, in the context of beyond gender, include absolutely. So, um, yes. So basically, all these are gender. Yeah. Again, it isn't simple. We are not saying this is the only issue that is happening. And a lot of the, I mean, rainfall variability is completely beyond our control. Non-farm income sources, exactly, there is very little, and therefore these women and men are becoming very, very vulnerable. And if you look at what happens, women are affected, both men and women are affected by all these things. But when there are non-farm income sources, evidence shows that men are the ones who actually go and access them. They can go out to another place, get employed or access that income. Women are constrained by a number of things. Their mobility is constrained, and therefore their access to markets is constrained. So it is a fairly complex issue. Again, no simple straight answers. That's why I was saying there's no silver bullet, there's no single intervention or innovation that is going to help us tackle all this. You need comprehensive solutions, which are a suite of things, brought together to address multiple things. In Nepal, men, yes, women are bearing absolutely in managing. Yes, so yes, exactly. Men, Nepal, Bangladesh, India, it's this everywhere. It's Southeast Asia as well. It's a very similar story. So so it's that whole household work and farm work, time poverty, their unpaid care work that women do, that is never accounted for. It's only now I think we are beginning to talk about, how many hours women spend per day. And if I remember the numbers correctly, I think in India, women spend 5 times more than men do in doing the household work, taking care of children and the household chores and all that. So we've got to address this whole unpaid care economy as well. So just giving them technologies to help them, to support them in the farm and all, is only adding to their burden. So that is why we have to look at all this in totality and then say, how do we make life easier for these women so that they benefit? And when women benefit, all of us benefit, the households benefit, the communities benefit. So what kind of interventions do you need? Childcare. That is not that we see that in the cities. Even that is still not good enough, I think, for women, but hardly anywhere in the rural areas. So how do we manage those? What kind of programs? That is why when we talk about climate smart agriculture, and then talking about these bundles I mentioned, that we need these to be multi-sectoral. it isn't enough if just the agriculture sector or the department or ministry is involved in designing these programs. We also need, the Ministry of Women and Child Welfare, all these social protection schemes, all these need to come together, and then we can design, what works for women and what doesn't. Um, yeah, I think, yeah, Prapti, thank you for that comment. Yes, absolutely. So is it just productivity? Yeah, sustainability. And interestingly, evidence also says that women are actually a lot more concerned and care about biodiversity and sustainability and so on as compared to men. So there is actually scientific evidence to say that. I think that's because they are looking at futures of that their children will be living in, and therefore are concerned about it and take care of the environment as well. So, and of course, that leads to everybody's well-being. Thank you so much. Women make the majority with the consent is comparative. Yes, very true. Again, huge. I mean, India. Um, it's. I mean, we all know it's as good as many countries in the same country. Regional differences are massive. So interest. Yes. Even in the so-called more progressive southern states, I'm also amazed to see how little say they have in decision making regarding agriculture and markets. That did come as a surprise to me. I was expecting it to be different. They're slightly better, but it's still a huge gap. So how do we manage that? Masculinity, absolutely, Edward. So thank you so much. So it is that transformative change. And then thank you for bringing this up. So working with women and making things work for women actually, it is really important for us to work with men to make that happen, because unless they support, unless they cooperate, we cannot tackle a lot of these things. So it is about changing those norms, the behaviors, the attitudes. It's what we call gender transformative change. And that is when, that is also a mechanism to actually help deal with this whole unpaid care work. The masculinities, there are time, we keep hearing about this, why doesn't your husband help you at home, a little bit with the cooking, taking care of children and all that. And then there are many people who said, well, he'd like to, but then he's afraid that the other men in the community are actually going to laugh at him. And this happens in a lot of countries and continents as well. So these masculinities, how do you deal with them? So a lot of social and behavioral change communication needs to go hand in hand with these climate smart agriculture, become a part of these programs. Yeah, great suggestions. Awareness material needs to be local language, very much visual as possible. And if they have access to phones and all, even voice messages, videos, what did come as a very positive and pleasant surprise to me, we were doing some field work around it, is that a lot of these young people, young men and women, said they prefer videos to reading anything, or pamphlets. Apparently YouTube is like extremely popular. So I think that's what we've got to target. And then our study also showed that the evidence also showed that video mediated messages actually work well for women as well. But what's important is language, jargon free language that they understand, and information, the messaging that is provided in a way that they can use easily. Some we've been doing some work on climate information services. This is something that's going on. We'll soon have a guideline coming out, work in progress. But everybody and anybody, every second organization that I know in India is providing climate information, and they call it climate advisories. But what they're providing, most of them, is information about weather forecasts, whether it's going to rain or not, when it is going to rain and all that. If you give that to me as a woman, or even a smallholder farmer who probably doesn't have a lot of scientific acumen and all that, what am I going to do with that? I need, what is the implication of that, this forecast for me? If you're telling me the rain is going to be delayed this season, what am I supposed to do? Should I delay sowing my crop, planting my crop? Should I do it earlier? Should I change the variety? So you need advice that information should be, the advisory should be provided so that it can guide these people to make decisions and take action. Just telling them, giving them a lot of meteorological data, what are they going to do with it? So it's essentially about that, information that they can readily use and be able to make decisions. A lack of data with the portal. Thank you. Yes, I don't think the portal here is a way of, I don't, well, actually, good question. You got me thinking. We will see if we can use this portal as a mechanism to pull together the data. But I think what is important is governments, all of us can collect data through our little research projects or whatever. But it is the governments that have the machinery, and they do collect some data, you know, uh, periodically, and publish their statistical, they have their statistical systems and so on. I think we need to get some of the important data points into those systems around this, so that they are able to collect them on a continuous basis, and then, and make them available so that we can use it. Also, the other thing we have seen is that there might be data, but using that data to inform the policy making is a critical capacity and skill that not a lot of government departments have. I know IFPRI is doing something in Orissa in India to help develop those skills. So I think those are the kinds of things that need to be done. But thanks for that. We will see what we can do if we could put available data here and so on. Labor saving, we are talking about drones. Hmm, Good question, Bharti. Are we saying that some of these technologies, labor saving technologies, would displace the labor? Yes, that's always been a bit of a concern, that when we introduce these labor saving technologies, women, the income generating wage labor that they have is actually taken away from them and affects them negatively. But it is also, and that is mainly because they do not have alternate income sources of, I mean, off farm, non farm, on farm. So when we do these things, these are the kinds of questions we need to ask ourselves. If we are in, and this is a question every researcher, every development practitioner should ask. We go out and we are introducing these things, but what implications does it have? So how do we manage that? How do we make sure they are not worse off because of this? So what other alternatives can be provided? So there are some examples. I mean, I think when these mechanical transplanters for rice, I mean, that is a literally back-breaking chore. I mean, farm activity that women do always. When that was introduced, I think it was in Bangladesh, that women actually lost their income source. Women who were doing transplanting, and so they were worse off. But in another context, the same machine, this was in Philippines, women could go and engage in another on-farm activity or off-farm activity, and so their labor burden reduced, but they still managed to protect their incomes through other sources. So again, this is very context specific, so we have to look at what is happening, and then how do we put in place safeguards that can mitigate these kinds of risks that we are talking about. um okay, linking women's to markets, interventions have enhanced women's agency. Okay. Um, okay. I see. Information provision about markets, women being aware of where the markets are, what the prices are, and being able to connect to those markets. And a lot of this has happened mainly through collectives, be it self-help groups, be it farmer producer organizations. So collectives have been extremely, extremely powerful in this regard. And therefore, I think we have to see how we capitalize on that and how we make them even better. The in again, huge country, lots of diversity. I know we also have people from other regions in the webinar, but again, a lot social norms, and then what kind of the women and their ability to speak up, take up leadership positions, all that has helped. Um, we see a lot of projects where we facilitate these linkages, for these women or women's groups with market agents and so on. A lot of NGOs do that as well. But where we actually, I think, go wrong, and why a lot of these things don't sustain after projects end, is because while doing this, when these projects are going on, we we do things for them instead of, we do a lot of trainings, but oftentimes it's ticking the boxes. But actually putting these women in the front, developing their leadership capacities, nurturing leaders, and letting the women handle all this is what needs to happen, so that they gain confidence and are also able to continue doing that when you disappear from the scene. That often doesn't happen. So essentially, it's leadership, collectives, what I've seen that really works, sustained participation, and so on. Women taking charge of what is happening and what needs to happen. We should be in the background and helping them do that. Um, agency, decision making, same thing. It is about giving them the space trusting them, giving them the knowledge and support that they need. Um, and it is that whole helping them develop that self-esteem and confidence. I mean, oftentimes it usually, women themselves say, when you say, oh, you've got to be the leader, you should be of this, they are like, no, I don't think I am leader material. Or, oh no, my husband doesn't think I can be a leader. And people and women who've said that, in due course have turned out to be like the most amazing leaders. So it is about trusting them, giving them the space, try and see, and then giving them the tools to be able to make those decisions, enough knowledge, information, confidence, and then that drives it. um yeah. Joe, that is a good question. So ideally, climate smart agriculture should respect and highlight farmer solutions, farmer-led solutions, or indigenous knowledge. So basically, I do think we need kind of a paradigm shift even in climate smart agriculture. What evidence shows is that it is very much sort of project and formal science driven. And I think I mentioned, and this actually in a lot of places actually tends to marginalize the indigenous knowledge. And I mean, farmers have survived over centuries adapting to, changes, be it climate, be it the rest of the economic environment, the cultural environment, the social environment, and so on. So they have learned to adapt. So we can't just dismiss what they know as, not being useful. So that's where I think we need to come down from where we are sitting and work with them to develop these together and not throw those out as well. So basically, it does need rethinking. uh, our mindsets need to change, and we need to be more humble and reimagine some of these programs and technologies and so on. Huge reduction. Dr. Lakshmaya, you're talking about the numbers, or maybe you're talking about a certain part of India, but sorry, there is no reduction. If they are not, what are we counting is the question. What are these national statistics about women working in agriculture saying? They are only counting the formal sector. So what is worrying when you see the numbers of women reducing it? More and more women are entering the informal sector. So the total numbers haven't reduced. If anything, if they haven't increased, they've stayed constant. No women that I know has actually stopped working or become obese because of that. Um, and it is interesting you bring that up. I'd love to see the proportion of men and women who are obese and have NCDs. Um, I don't think many of the rural women have actually stopped working or gotten out of agriculture. If anything, they are doing more, but more informal and therefore much more vulnerable. So something for us to be actually worried about. Mo has a question. Tend to work with yes. Um, Mo, good question. As I was saying earlier, there is elite capture in these programs. Even the programs targeted to work with the most marginal groups, even there is elite capture. So there are these favorite people, sort of the more permanent. It's the same group of people who go to trainings, every training, or same group of men and women. It's the same group of people who are engaged in all programs, as you said. Every program in the village, they're part of it. And why is that happening? I don't think it is always about women hesitating to come forward, I think we have to look at how we are approaching it. Because what do? We want to, being very honest, we try to, we go for the low hanging fruit, right? Whatever makes it easier for us to work, tick the boxes, so we don't have to spend too much time convincing them to come for us to work with them and all that. So whatever is easy. And because we want to showcase results, and we want to take our donors and whoever when they come, so we want people who can speak well, are confident, and therefore, so we just end up doing this. So I don't think we, all the other women are hesitating to come forward. It's also about giving them the opportunities. So I think it is for us to reflect on how we are approaching, why we are ending up with that same group, year after year, program after program, and why are we ignoring the others. So how do we broaden the net when we go to work in some of these places? um, and that's the thing, right? I mean, failure is not accepted. Um, we we want to be seen. Our projects need to be seen as being successful. Therefore, we want to go and do what's easy and what gives us the best results in the shortest possible time, which is great. But that way, you're also increasing that gap between the different groups of women, different groups of men and women. Why do extension agents go the male extension agents go only to the men in the community? It's easier for them to talk with them, right? And then because they can make decisions. But then if you want to go talk to the women, you have to convince the household and all that stuff. So sorry, I see I've short my time quite a bit. So yeah, so I think it is us to reflect and then say, how do we correct this? I think the ball is in our court for that one. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Pushkar, for staying on. We've actually exceeded the time, but for staying,
Oh,
I hope.
sorry, I got carried away. I wasn't looking at the time.
I am so grateful that I was actually thinking of interrupting in between to check whether you do have the time to stay on. But thank you so much for taking all of those questions. Also, a big thank you to the audience for bringing up all of these questions and making this a very interactive session. Thank you so much, Dr. Pushkar, for taking out the time today. I hope we see you again.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for engaging. Appreciate it much.
Yeah. Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Anisha and IFPRI.
Yeah. We'll be sharing the recording of the presentation as well as ma'am's file as well. So we'll do that after the meeting is over. Thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.